Well, thank you, Liam, for joining us post-Christmas, pre-Birmingham. First of all, just how's the squad looking? I gather that Andy and Ross are both now full training. Does that mean that they're in contention for St Andrews?
No, it's still too early for those guys. But yeah, in a couple of weeks, hopefully they'll be in contention to be involved. I think, it's making sure that you get the right work into them so that when they are available for selection, they stay available and that we don't put them any unnecessary extra risk by rushing it. So they're very close. They're, like I said, they're doing some full training and have been for a week or so. So they're a lot closer, which is good news.
I've yet to meet Ross. I imagine it's a bit like a caged animal, though, isn't he? He must be desperate to return to first team action, and you've got to quell that a little bit and say, look, it's long term rather than short term in your case.
Yeah, no, he's desperate to get back. And again, I think his experience and his character will definitely add to the group in terms of the qualities that he's got. So looking forward to seeing him back fully and playing in games. To be fair, I think he's obviously had a challenging period, but at the same point he would have definitely developed some other skill sets and attributes, in terms of resilience and coping strategies. And I think it's never nice to miss the game, but sometimes it that hunger in your belly grows even bigger. So he's definitely got that, and he's desperate to get back.
And when you win 4-1 away from home, I imagine there's a temptation to name an unchanged side for the next match. But how much of you is also wary of fatigue and rotation?
Yeah, it's something that I've always said. Team selection is something I'll never ever take lightly. It's the hardest part of the job. And we're at that stage, especially when you look at it. Obviously, in season we go Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. Whereas if you look at the programme now, it's almost doing like a Saturday, Tuesday, Friday. So you actually get a day less in between the second and third games. So there's a lot of bits we have to look at. We have to make sure, whether it be previous injury history, whether it be fatigue from recently, whether it be form, whether it be the game plan in terms of how we think we can hurt the opposition. There's so many factors that go into selecting a team. Obviously you saw at the weekend that we changed Joe Williams and Matty James in terms of, obviously with nothing to do with how Jamo's done, just in terms of freshness and energy. And I thought Joe was outstanding when he came in, to be fair. So I think it's nice to be able to have that that competition in the group in certain areas which we need to make sure that we add, and whether that be players returning or obviously a little bit in January. I think that competition and that people understanding it's about the team and that we will make tweaks and changes to make sure that we're in the best place possible to compete to win.
And it's encouraging that you said after the game at Watford that you think the team can do even better. Is that a case of a bit of keeping the players' feet on the ground, but also how can they do better?
Yeah, and I didn't want it to come across like I was belittling the positive stuff, because there was so many positives to come from the game. I thought the control out of possession, especially the second goal, bits we'd worked on in terms of how we go from block to press. Some of the moments in possession, the control we had at times, the areas we got into were excellent. I think it was more my little bits, I think, in terms of how and where we can improve. And we had a chat with the players about it, was just the little moments of, high level focus. So not shifting momentum and giving up control by a little, taking too long on the ball or an extra touch or a misplaced pass. Those little bits where, they can be big momentum shifters. But I think it's just kind of that mindset of, look, if the opposition are going to get anything against us, they're going to have to work for it, and we're not going to give them anything. So they were the little bits for me that, again, I think what also excites me is that room for growth and that area where we can get better with the basics. And again, I think, like I said, so many positives to come from it. Overall, I was obviously extremely pleased. But again, that tiny bit of me where I always look at, what did we do well, what can we do better, is kind of ingrained in me.
And in the short time I've known you, it's clearly you're about the next game rather than talk of playoffs and things like that. But psychologically, if you were to go into the new year in the top six, what would that mean?
That we're in the top six. No, I think it's one of those. For me, I think the biggest thing is momentum, is taking confidence from it, and confidence is a big thing, right? I think in football, people talk about you don't want to be overconfident, which again I think is really important. At the same point, you don't want to be low on it. You have to work really hard to keep it kind of in a sweet spot, as I talk a lot around. So I think it's performances when you're playing like we are and you've won some games helps. It's a lot easier, I think, to not get too high than it is to not get too low. So again, I think that in terms of where the group at, I think what the lads have really bought into though is that cultural aspect of what we're trying to build. Of it's about the next 90 minutes coming up. It's about making sure that behaviourally we're not an emotional roller coaster in game or in between games, and that we understand it's such a long, relentless season that, you know, it's making sure that the behaviours that, you know, we show in each game, the plans, the work that we do daily in training, you know, is where it needs to be, because then ultimately that allows you to be ready to go and perform and win at this level.
And can you just describe the challenge that Birmingham will provide? Because from the outside, as a layman, they seem to be struggling. They lost at home to Stoke, but I guess you assess as much their strengths as much as their weaknesses that appear to be apparent at the moment.
Yeah, I think it makes them dangerous, especially at home. I think in terms of, you know, we all have that fighting spirit in us. So again, I'm sure in terms of, you know, they'll be looking to respond. They'll be looking to, you know, to change their form, their run. So again, I think that, you know, for me, any game you go into, you have to do the same work, the same preparation, the same mindset, the same behaviours. You know, the margins are so fine at this level that it can easily shift either way. So again, for me, it's, of course, we've done our work and, you know, identified their threats, identified, you know, where we think we can hurt them. And then it's making sure we go into the game and controlling what we can. So we can control, like I said, our plan. We can control how we apply ourselves. We can control the level of focus we put into the game, the level of competitiveness that we carry. So it always shifts back to us and what we can control and what we can do.
And it's our final press conference of 2023. You've been at the club for a few weeks now. Can you just tell me where you think Bristol City are at as we head into a new year?
Yeah, I think we're still progressing. I think we're still in the early stages of a journey of where we're going to grow. I think as a team and as a not just what you see on a Saturday. I think bits behind the scenes are you know, there's a lot of work that goes into some of the processes that we have. So, you know, whether it be, you know, the preparation for a game, or whether it be reviewing a game, you know, there's still huge areas for me that we can make big gains in, and it's growing all the time. It's improving all the time as relationships do, and as we kind of go through this, you know, this journey where we've had a tough run, we've had a good run. It's, you know, going through some of those and learning from them, which I think is, you know, massively important, and that's the bit that excites me. I think there's so much potential, you know, both on and off the pitch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi Liam, it's Tristan here at Bristol Live. You said after the Blackburn game that you felt that you might have been overloading the players with information and stuff, and what you wanted to try and get across. Given the results have turned since then, does that mean you've tweaked or simplified it or changed the message and instructions at all?
Yeah, no, good question. I think in terms of we had a look at it. I think that in terms of the volume of games and quick succession then, and sometimes you need to go through that, I think, to come out the other side. So we made small tweaks, but then the last two games, the information's been as what it was pre-Blackburn. So again, I think it's sometimes, you know, in terms of stepping back a little bit to observe, to reflect on what we're giving the players, because ultimately that we have to give them what they need to go and perform. And I think that's the key to it. We have to adapt ourselves a little bit rather than, you know, forcing everything on them, going, right, we're doing it irrespective. I think sometimes it's just tweaking little bits where, you know, whether it be a little bit less video work, or, you know, just delivering it in a slightly different way, or, you know, maybe doing a bit extra on the grass instead of the meeting room. I think we looked at a couple of bits like that. But again, I think we're back to where we were pre-Blackburn anyway in terms of the last couple of games. So it's definitely something the staff, we always go away, we analyse ourselves, we reflect on what we give the players, how we operate, how we communicate, and go through the same process we do when we analyse their performance. Because ultimately I think like I said, it's about us making sure we give the players everything they need to be able to go and execute, you know, the game plan, or, you know, deliver to the highest level that they're capable of.
Thank you. You showed a lot of faith in Taylor Gardner-Hickman lately, as almost the kind of like the senior central midfielder, although obviously Matty James is the elder statesman. What stood out to you about his performances? What's made him one of the names on the team sheet that seems to be there all the time?
Yeah, I think Taylor's has really progressed since we've been here. Again, I know he had a couple of games where he's out the team, which he obviously wasn't happy about, as none of the lads should be or are. And again, I think what he did, Huddersfield away, he came on and responded in the right way for me, and did everything that we'd want in terms of, you know, a bit of a reaction. And I think he brings an element of composure and quality. You know, his delivery on set pieces has been hugely impactful, and he's got that in terms of where he can step and join in attacks as well. But I think at the same point, what helps him is he's got two terrific pros pushing him as well. So again, I think when I look at, you know, Joe Williams, I thought was outstanding. Like I said, against Watford, Jamo's been terrific as well. Obviously, you know, in Sunderland and Hull, as you know, in those fixtures, we've got 3 battling it out. To be fair, which for me is what you need. You know, I think we can work it so that everybody pushes everybody, and I'm going to have to make changes at time that they're probably not going to like, but I think it's them understanding and communicating with them. It's about the team, but I've been really pleased with the 3 of them. To be fair.
He's obviously on loan at the moment, and the agreement with West Brom is to make it permanent. Is that something that you might do in January, or do you have to wait till the summer?
Yeah, it's the option to make it permanent. So again, I think it's one of those where we don't need to rush into anything. I think, there'll be discussions ongoing behind the scenes for us to go, right, what does that look like? And obviously, take our time to make sure that it's right for everybody. Okay,
and you mentioned him earlier, and he was the man of the match at Watford, Joe Williams. It's great to see him back because he needs to kind of build up a run of performances, doesn't he? Yeah, he's had injury problems for a long time. He's given he's out of contract at the end of the season. Is his contract something that you've discussed with him or Brian Tinian yet?
No, it's still the early stages, I think, in terms of where we're at. I think I've been delighted with Joe. It was a little unfortunate, obviously, when we came in. He hadn't played before we first came in. He'd been out, I think, for 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it was. So he had to be a little bit patient. But again, I thought he was, like I said, he was excellent against Watford. He's one that we have to be a little mindful of, just in terms of the volumes of games in such a quick succession. He's obviously not done that in a while, so we have to make sure we manage and look after him. And then the contract stuff is just, for me, that's not. It's probably priority for him, but not for us at the moment, just in terms of we need to take time to assess things, get to January, see where we're at with that. And then there'll be discussions that will happen in the future. But for me, as always, face-to-face contact, communication with the players to discuss things like that. And, for me, is really important how we do it. So when the time's right, that will happen.
Thank you. Joe, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Liam. You mentioned about Anis and how he's kind of growing with confidence. Obviously, had a few games in the side. But as always, when one player comes in and has a run, it means someone has to drop out. I just wondered how Sam Bowles kind of reacted to not have as much game time recently as he'd have liked.
Yeah, I have to say, in terms of how he's responded, is how he should and how I expect. He's kept his head down. His attitude's been excellent. He's worked extremely hard. He's been ready to, contribute to the team when called upon. I thought he did a really good job when he came in against Hull. I thought in terms of, the couple of crosses he got in, a couple of the runs down that he made down the side, the back behind the opposition. I thought, he did that. And again, as we know, the season's so long. There's so many factors that, you'll get another opportunity, in the near future. It's then making sure that your head's in a good spot and your body's in a good spot so that, you can make the most of it.
And do you have to approach that a bit differently with younger players when they're not in the side, as opposed to, the likes of Matty James, Andy Weidman? Is it a bit more arm around the shoulder, or does it kind of depend on the individual, would you say?
Yeah, it depends on the individual. Again, for me, I think that in terms of, there's levels of communication. I like to, as much as possible, like to feed back to the players, and I like to discuss with them. And then there's also sometimes where I think, sometimes you actually need to kind of leave them and let them develop some coping strategies, or... and I think that the players get it. They know when people are performing well. I think there's also that element to it. But like I said, it's everybody prioritising the team, and whether you're on the bench, whether you're not in the squad, whether you're starting, I think it's making sure that you do everything so that the team, is in the best place possible. Simple as like today, we obviously do, some 11v11 work to get ready for the game. We do attacking, defending, set pieces. The lads that aren't in the team, can only. They have to do their best job to make sure the starting lineup's ready and best prepared, because ultimately you're letting them down if you don't, apply yourself properly. So I can't speak highly enough of the players that haven't probably had the minutes they want. But again, I think it's, like I said, it's making sure that, when called upon, everybody's ready and good to go.
And I think you mentioned on Cal, he suffered a bit of a setback. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit of a setback. We're just kind of finalising that now, so we'll be able to give you some more news in the near future. But yeah, unfortunately, he's had a little bit of a setback.
Is that his hamstring, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, it's to do with that, yeah.
No problem. Just another player I wanted to pick out, Cam Pring. Under the previous manager, he was kind of got forward as much as possible on every occasion. And the first few matches under yourself, he kind of seemed a bit reluctant to do that as much. But over the last kind of 3 or 4 games, he really seems to have got that balance spot on between attacking and defending. You must be really pleased with the kind of progression he's shown, both tactically and attacking wise.
Yeah, I think as with all the lads, I think their clarity in what we're asking them to do is growing. So again, I think you can see that with the connections, with the shape of the team, with the way we play. I think they're starting to grasp it. And as I always said, I said it after QPR, they quickly created the shapes that we wanted, but didn't know how to play it too well. I think what you've seen is now they're starting to play the shape better. I think what the structure of the team, and there's always a balance to it. I don't want it to be robotic. I want players to play off position so that you can repeat good over and over again, but also have an element of freedom within that, so that they don't feel like they're playing with shackles. And I think that's nothing worse for a football. I think there's a real fine balance to giving clarity, but also freedom off of it. So I think Pringy, we're asking him to do a lot physically as well, which again doesn't go unnoticed. I think he's the way we're asking him to join in attacks, but then also recover back into left back. He's done a really good job of that. And again, I think he's someone that's got a huge amount of room for growth and progress as well. I think there's so many positive aspects to his game, and also so many areas he can improve at as well, which is the bit like with a few of the lads I said after the game of the weekend that excites me.
Yeah, and obviously just on the transfer window, only a few days until the January one opens. Obviously, there's been a bit of talk about bringing in maybe an attacking reinforcement in January, if possible. Another position, there's kind of been a bit of concern over the last few months, even before your arrival, was the goalkeeper position. Obviously, Max has been brilliant this season, but in terms of depth, if he was to, say, get injured, there isn't really a recognised experienced goalkeeper at the club. So I just wondered if that was a position on anyone's mind about potentially dipping into in the transfer window.
No, as it stands, happy with Steph. To be fair, Steph's trained really well. He's performed well in the 21s game. So again, I think in terms of what we've got there at the minute, I'm quite happy with the quality, the depth, the competition we've got there. So again, I think it's not an immediate priority for me.
Okay, and just finally on Ross, obviously, as you say, it's important to be really steady in his recovery. Obviously, City fans haven't actually had a chance to see him yet on the pitch. I just wondered if you could give them a little bit of an insight as to him in terms of his traits and attributes, really.
Yeah, I think the fans will like him a lot. I think in terms of he's got an element of bite, an element of aggression. He drives and demands a standard, which I really like. You definitely see that out of possession with how aggressive he is, which again is a strength. And then in possession, he'll get forward, he'll join in attacks. He's got good range, and obviously he's someone that's played games at a really good level, so he's an experienced one as well. So again, I think he's someone that's definitely going to add to the group massively when he's available for selection.
Great, thank you for your time, Liam.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you.
Cheers, gents. Thank you. Appreciate that.